So I unfortunately was not planning to make a video about the Vancouver Canucks heading into today's matchup against the Calgary Flames, but this piece of news via Rick Dollywall on Donnie and Dolly, on Sakaris and Price, I should say, instead, was indeed juicy enough to talk about, so we're going to be bringing this up on the channel while also talking about a few other teams and just the overall profile this player has too. Because today we're talking about Andrei Kuzmenko. Who is this guy? Well, he is a pretty obscure hockey player, seeing that he does not have a picture on Elite Prospects. I'm joking about that, by the way. But Kuzmenko is a top KHL point producer. He's 26 years old, 5'11", 194, as a right-handed left-wing player. And this season for SKA St. Petersburg, he had 53 points in 45 games played. He has spent the past few seasons playing for SKA St. Petersburg. Before that, he was with CSKA Moscow. This season, though, in the playoffs in the KHL, Kuzmenko had 14 points in 16 games too. But with his season with SKA coming to a close, and with May 1st approaching on the mark, we have ourselves an opportunity for Kuzmenko to sign with the NHL heading into the next few weeks. This is an article on ProHockeyRumors.com from April 8th, talking about the update that Chris Johnston had on insider trading. The world has changed quite a bit since Andrei Kuzmenko's name surfaced in November as a player that was drawing interest from NHL teams. Given his place in the KHL and Russia's actions in the invasion of Ukraine, it wasn't all too clear whether teams would still pursue the soon-to-be free agent. On last night, so April 7th's insider trading segment, Chris Johnston cleared that up. I think what's interesting is that even with the situation with Russia having invaded Ukraine, it does not seem to have scared teams off at this point. And Kuzmenko's contract in Russia runs through April 30th, so as of May 1st, he is available to sign an NHL deal. The article then goes over Kuzmenko and his playoff success and all that, whatever. Chris Johnston notes that a deal is not cooked yet, meaning there isn't an agreement in place at this point. The Canucks and the Chicago Blackhawks have confirmed interest, but in 2018, the last time Kuzmenko was discussing NHL contracts, his agent said 24 teams reached out. If it's anywhere near that many this time around, he'll have quite a few options to choose from. To be clear, Kuzmenko would not be eligible for this year's playoffs even if he joins a team still involved. The reason for this is because he's not on any NHL team's reserve list. As an undrafted player, he would have to have signed the contract before the trade deadline to help them out in the postseason. And so that was the update we had back on April 8th. We also had ourselves another article coming out saying that the Edmonton OILERS actually appeared to be the frontrunners for Kuzmenko and his services. Here is what Mikhail Zislis said on Twitter. He is a writer for Sport Express RU, which is a Russian sports media website. This was on April 16th. According to Bugard2, the highly touted KHL free agent, skilled forward Andrei Kuzmenko, who spent the last 4 seasons with SKA St. Petersburg in the KHL, leans heavily to choose the OILERS as his NHL destination. And so, when it comes to the potential teams, this is one of those that has been apparently brought up as a frontrunner. But then we also had ourselves this segment from Rick Dollywall on Sakaris and Price. Dollywall says on the show that Vancouver will definitely be considered. There's going to be an interview process that starts in early May. Not only that, but Rick Dollywall also says that apparently the Canucks management staff, so Rutherford, Alvin, etc., they liked Kuzmenko so much that even back when they were in Pittsburgh, they were still trying to get him on their radar. So, if this is a management team that has believed in this guy for so long, you go back to, let's say, 2018, the last time that Kuzmenko was being considered for NHL action, he was going out there as a half a point a game player with CSKA Moscow, and there were upwards of 24 teams that were involved and asking about this guy. Ultimately, he did not sign an NHL contract, but you take a look at where he is now. Okay, it's 4 years later. He is now 26 years old rather than 22, and he is one of the top KHL point producers. Now, I gotta go out there and stress this every time we talk about KHL athletes and the amount of production they get. Just because somebody is a point per game plus in the KHL does not guarantee them to being a point per game plus in the NHL. That is something we always have to say, because it's easy for people to go out there and say, oh, look at Artemi Panarin. Panarin was so good in the KHL. Then he came over to the NHL and he won the Calder. He beat McDavid because Russians always beat the first overall franchise generational Canadian kids for the Calder, right? It happened with Ovi, it happened with Panarin. but Panarin was one of the exceptions to the rules. He was always a very elite, talented player that was so skilled that you just could not contain this guy. Might I remind you that so many of these KHL guys come over to the NHL and don't amount to much, even the top players in the KHL this season. Here are some guys that produce like crazy in the 30, 40-ish point mark. Marcus Granlund, Jori Lehtera, Nikolai Goldolbin. You have Brendan Leipsic over here. Sure, the top players are all guys that you probably recognize in some respect. Miro Aaltonen was a former Leafs guy. Damir Zafarov is another guy. Corbin Knight is a former NHLer too, but just barely because he played most of his North American career in the AHL. So when it comes to the caliber of talent for KHL point producers, not all the top dogs over there will be top dogs over here. It's just, when it comes to Kuzmenko, there are more traits than one that make him a valuable option. Here's an article by Daniel Wagner on February 24th, 2022 from VancouverisAwesome.com. The 26-year-old winger is one of the most highly prized undrafted free agents available. Here are the scouting reports on Kuzmenko and his entire profile and how he plays. Corey Pronman of The Athletic said this: Kuzmenko has a very high skill level, being able to beat KHL defenders with his one-on-one play often and create many highlight reel moments. He can make creative passes and improvises well in tight areas. He has the flashy skill, but he also plays hard. Wagner then goes over his own few scouting notes. He's got flashy skill, he can create something out of nothing, such as this solo effort where he picked off a pass in the neutral zone and moved in 1-on-3, beats the defender, fakes a move to the front of the net, fooling the other defender and then the goalie before finishing off on a wraparound. He's also got an excellent shot, and he's an excellent playmaker. Even though he is under 6 feet, he is still a very offensively gifted player. One scouting report says that his game is so well refined at this point, he plays all 3 zones with fire, makes smart and little plays. He shows exceedingly good edge work and has a strong, very solid base. Variety of shots, vision, and game awareness. He can be an effective player on North American ice and could easily be a two-way middle six forward with scoring upside. And so, Kuzmenko is a guy that I think you should be very excited for. Even though I went through the whole disclaimer that, okay, KHL guys are not always going to be fantastic, it doesn't mean you're not allowed to be excited. If anybody goes out there and signs Kuzmenko, obviously I want to see this guy come into the NHL and succeed. I want to see players who haven't had that level of NHL success have that level soon. And so, with Edmonton being the apparent frontrunner, Vancouver also getting involved, you had a Darren Dreger hit from a few weeks ago that was also highlighting the same thing, that Alvin was interested in that. You would kind of have to think that for Kuzmenko himself, it appears that Vancouver would have a higher likelihood of him actually making the team and making an impact than Edmonton. Like, no disrespect to the Canucks, but this team is probably going to lose out on a few significant players in the offseason. Miller, likely to get traded. Besser, I'd say the same thing. You have some other guys that are expiring here. The entire bottom 6 pretty much is going to be gone, and then you have all the AHL top guys that are going to need new contracts too. I think that there's a little bit more of an opportunity for Kuzmenko in Vancouver, and that's not just me saying that because I'm a Canucks fan and I want them to get players, but like, come on, if you're a guy who is in Russia, you want to play in the NHL, you want to come over to North America for the first time, where do you think you're going to have a chance to play in the NHL more? With an Oilers squad with Connor McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Yamamoto, Puljujärvi, okay, maybe not Puljujärvi, but then everybody else too, or a Canucks forward core that is likely going to lose out on like half the lineup based off of who needs new contracts and who doesn't. Right? Like, playing with McDavid is cool and all, but I think there's a lot more open spots for Vancouver. That's just kind of my own opinion on that. Chicago was also mentioned as a team that was interested in him in the previous Pro Hockey Rumors article, and I kind of feel sorry for ignoring that, but there is a lot of opportunity as well with Chicago, with all of their guys, the RFAs, that are going to need re-signing and apparently are not going to get re-signed or even tendered, so it's going to be cool to see where Kuzmenko signs, but if there were 24 gosh darn teams out there interested in him this time around, then hey, he's going to have a whole bunch more options than just Edmonton, Vancouver, and Chicago. So let me know in the comments all your thoughts if you're a Canucks fan or an Oilers fan. If you are a random guy from the KHL like Kuzmenko is, you're pretty good and you want to sign an NHL contract, where do you go between these two teams? Edmonton to play with McDavid or Vancouver to play in a position where there's probably more opportunity? Do you disagree that there's more opportunity in Vancouver? Am I just kind of talking out of my behind here? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.